The glass walls of Harrison Reed's corner office reflected the Manhattan skyline in fractured diamonds of morning light. Linda Carter stood before his massive desk, her tablet clutched against her chest like a shield. She had worked for Quantum Industries for 5 years, rising from receptionist to executive assistant to the CEO himself. Every promotion had been earned through late nights, missed dinners, and a dedication that bordered on obsession today. That dedication felt like chains. Harrison leaned back in his leather chair, his steel-gray eyes scanning the quarterly report she had compiled. His jaw was tight, his expensive suit crisp, despite the early hour. At 42, he had built Quantum Industries from a startup in his garage to a technology empire worth billions. His reputation for perfectionism was legendary. His reputation for compassion was non-existent. "This is unacceptable," he said, his voice cold as winter rain. He tossed the tablet onto his desk where it landed with a sharp crack. The Anderson presentation was supposed to include market projections for the next 5 years, not 3. The Collins merger documents are missing the subsidiary breakdown. And this, he gestured at the tablet with disgust, looks like it was compiled by an intern, not my executive assistant. Linda felt heat rise in her cheeks. She had worked until 3 in the morning on those documents. The Anderson projections had been limited to 3 years, because their own analysts had only provided 3 years of reliable data. The Collins merger was so complex that even the legal team was still sorting through subsidiary structures. But Harrison Reed did not accept excuses. He accepted results. "I based the Anderson projections on the data your team provided," Linda said, keeping her voice level despite the anger simmering beneath her calm exterior. "The Collins merger paperwork is incomplete because the legal department is still finalizing the subsidiary analysis. I compiled what was available." "Then you should have pushed harder," Harrison snapped, standing abruptly. He was tall, over 6 feet, and he used his height like a weapon, looming over people when he wanted to intimidate them. "I don't pay you to make excuses, Linda. I pay you to make things happen. If the analytics team is dragging their feet, you light a fire under them. If legal is moving too slowly, you expedite the process. That is your job." "My job," Linda said, her voice rising despite her best efforts to control it, "is to be your assistant, not your miracle worker. I cannot force departments to produce data that does not exist yet. I cannot make legal proceedings move faster than the law allows. I am one person, Harrison, not an entire company." The use of his first name made his eyes narrow. She never called him Harrison. It was always Mr. Reed in front of others, sir, when they were alone. The slip revealed just how frustrated she had become. "If you cannot handle the responsibilities of this position," Harrison said quietly, and somehow his quiet voice was more terrifying than his shouts, "then perhaps you are not the right person for it." The words hit Linda like a physical blow. 5 years. 5 years of sacrificing her personal life, her friendships, her chance at romance or family. 5 years of proving herself over and over, only to be told she was not enough. "You are right," Linda heard herself say, as if from a great distance. "Perhaps I am not the right person for this position. Perhaps you should find someone else. Someone who can work miracles on demand. Someone who does not need sleep or breaks or basic human consideration." She pulled the Quantum Industries ID badge from around her neck and placed it carefully on his desk. Next to the tablet that represented hundreds of hours of her work, "Consider this my resignation. Effective immediately," she said, surprised by how steady her voice sounded. "I am sure you will have no trouble replacing me. After all, I am clearly not irreplaceable." For a long moment, Harrison simply stared at her. Then he moved faster than she expected, circling the desk to stand between her and the door. His presence filled the space, commanding and intense. "No," he said simply. "Excuse me." Linda blinked, certain she had misheard. "No," Harrison repeated, his voice firm. "I am not accepting your resignation. Pick up your badge. You just told me I was not good enough for this job," Linda said, anger flaring bright and hot in her chest. "You said I was replaceable. So replace me. Find someone better. Find someone who meets your impossible standards." "I never said you were replaceable," Harrison said. And there was something new in his voice now, something that sounded almost like panic. "I said, if you cannot handle it, but you can handle it." "You have been handling it brilliantly for 5 years, then why?" Linda demanded, and she hated how her voice broke slightly. Why do you constantly criticize everything I do? Why is nothing ever good enough? Why do you treat me like I am disposable when you know how hard I work? Harrison ran a hand through his dark hair, mussing the perfect styling for the first time in Linda's memory. He looked suddenly older, tired in a way that expensive suits and corner offices could not hide. Because, he said, and then stopped, seeming to struggle with words that did not come easily to him. Because you are the only person in this entire company who tells me the truth. Everyone else manages me, flatters me, tells me what they think I want to hear. You tell me when I am wrong. You push back when my demands are unreasonable. You are not afraid of me, and that makes you invaluable. Linda stared at him, momentarily speechless. This was not the Harrison Reed she knew, the cold and calculating CEO who ran his empire with ruthless efficiency. If I am so invaluable, she said carefully, why do you treat me like I am not? Because I am terrified, Harrison admitted, the words seeming to cost him something. I am terrified that one day you will realize you deserve better than working for someone who does not appreciate you enough. I am terrified that you will leave, and I will lose the one person who keeps this company and keeps me grounded. Before Linda could respond, a sharp knock interrupted them. Jessica Morgan, the VP of Operations, entered without waiting for permission, her face pale. We have a problem, Jessica said urgently. The board just called an emergency meeting. Someone leaked information about the titanium project to the press. Stock prices are already dropping. They want answers, and they want them now. Harrison's expression shifted instantly from vulnerable to commanding. When? Conference room at 10 minutes. Jessica left as quickly as she had arrived. Harrison turned back to Linda, and she saw the mask settling back into place, the CEO replacing the man who had just revealed his fears. I need you, he said simply. Not just for this meeting, but for everything that comes after. Pick up your badge, Linda, please. Linda looked at the badge on his desk, then at Harrison, then back at the badge. She thought about walking away, about finding a job where her boss appreciated her, where she did not work herself into exhaustion for grudging acknowledgement. But she also thought about the vulnerability she had just witnessed, the admission that had clearly cost him dearly, and she thought about the company itself, about the thousands of employees whose livelihoods depended on quantum industries succeeding. This conversation is not over, Linda said, picking up the badge and putting it back around her neck. After the meeting, we are going to discuss expectations, boundaries, and basic human decency. Understood? Understood, Harrison said, and the relief in his eyes was unmistakable. They walked toward the conference room together, the tension between them unresolved, but acknowledged. Linda did not know what the emergency meeting would bring, but she knew that everything had just changed between her and Harrison Reed. The question was whether that change would destroy them or save them. Both the conference room was all ready, filled with board members when Linda and Harrison entered. 12 faces turned toward them, expressions ranging from concern to openly hostile. At the head of the table sat Charles Whitmore, the board chairman, his silver hair perfectly combed and his expression carved from granite. Harrison, Charles said, his voice clipped. We have a situation. Someone leaked details about the titanium project to TechWorld magazine. They are publishing an expose tomorrow morning. Our stock has already dropped 8% in pre-market trading. Linda felt her stomach drop. The titanium project was quantum industry's most ambitious venture, a revolutionary artificial intelligence platform that would transform how businesses process data. They had invested 3 years and $2 billion into development. If their competitors learned the technical specifications before launch, they could copy the innovation, or worse, beat them to market. Harrison remained perfectly calm, taking his seat at the table with Linda standing just behind him, her tablet ready. How much did they leak? He asked. Enough, replied Margaret Chen, the CFO, sliding a printout across the table. Technical specifications, timeline, projected revenue, everything except the actual source code. Linda scanned the document over Harrison's shoulder, her mind racing. The information was detailed and accurate, which meant it came from someone with high-level access. Someone inside the company. We need to identify the source, said Robert Torres, head of security. I am recommending a full internal investigation. Audit all employee communications, check access logs, interview anyone who had clearance. That will take weeks, Jessica interjected. We do not have weeks. The article publishes tomorrow. We need damage control now. We need more than damage control, Charles said, his eyes fixed on Harrison. We need to know if this was corporate espionage or simple negligence. Either way, this happened on your watch, Harrison. The board wants to know what you are going to do about it. Linda felt Harrison tense slightly, the only sign that Charles's words had struck a nerve. She knew the board had been looking for reasons to question Harrison's leadership. He was brilliant but difficult, innovative but uncompromising. Some board members thought he needed to be reined in. Others wanted him replaced entirely. Give me 48 hours, Harrison said. Linda and I will identify the leak, contain the damage, and present a strategy for moving forward. 48 hours? Margaret laughed without humor. Harrison, this is not something you can fix with hard work and determination. We need experts, investigators, crisis management teams. And we will use them, Harrison replied smoothly. But I know this company better than anyone. If there is a leak, I will find it. Charles studied Harrison for a long moment, then nodded slowly. 48 hours. But Harrison, if you cannot deliver, the board will take action. Quantum Industries is bigger than any one person, even you. The threat hung in the air as the meeting adjourned. Board members filed out in clusters, their voices low and urgent. Linda waited until the room was empty before speaking. What are you thinking? She asked quietly. Harrison stood and walked to the window, staring out at the city below. I am thinking that someone very close to me betrayed this company. The information that leaked required executive-level clearance. That limits the suspects to about 15 people. 15 people you trust, Linda added. Trusted, Harrison corrected bitterly. Past tense. Linda opened her tablet and pulled up the security access logs. We should start with who accessed the Titanium Project files in the last month. Cross-reference that with any unusual behavior, financial problems, connections to competitors. You sound like a detective, Harrison said, turning to look at her with something that might have been admiration. I sound like someone who has worked for you long enough to think like you, Linda replied. Now stop wasting time and help me figure this out. You have 48 hours, remember? They worked through the afternoon and into the evening, reviewing access logs, interviewing key personnel, and analyzing patterns. Linda ordered food from the executive dining room, which arrived, untouched as they became increasingly absorbed in their investigation. Harrison shed his suit jacket, rolled up his sleeves, and transformed from intimidating CEO to focused problem solver. Here, Linda said suddenly, pointing to her screen. David Brennan accessed the Titanium files 17 times in the last 2 weeks. That is more than anyone else, including you. Addison moved to look over her shoulder. Close enough that Linda could smell his cologne. Something expensive and subtle that made her momentarily lose her train of thought. David is our VP of development, Harrison said slowly. He would have legitimate reasons to access those files. 17 times? Linda questioned. What could require that many accesses? And look at this. 3 of those accesses were at 2 in the morning. Why would he need to review development files in the middle of the night? Harrison straightened, his expression darkening. Pull up his financial records. If he has money problems, that could be motive. Linda hesitated. That requires authorization from HR and legal. It could take hours. I am the CEO, Harrison said flatly. I am authorizing it. Do it. 20 minutes later, Linda had the information. He has been making large deposits to an offshore account. $50,000 every 2 weeks for the last 3 months. Total of $300,000. Where is the money coming from? Harrison demanded. Linda dug deeper into the records, her fingers flying across the keyboard. The deposits trace back to a shell corporation registered in the Cayman Islands. The shell corporation is owned by another shell corporation, which is owned by... She paused, her eyes widening. Nexus Tech, Harrison swore quietly. Nexus Tech was Quantum Industries' biggest competitor. A company that had been trying to poach their talent and steal their innovations for years. David has been selling us out, Harrison said, his voice cold with fury. He has been feeding information to Nexus Tech, and they have been paying him for it. We need to inform security, Linda said, reaching for her phone. Wait, Harrison grabbed her wrist, stopping her. His touch was warm, firm, and sent an unexpected jolt through Linda's arm. If we alert security now, David will know we are on to him. He will destroy evidence, lawyer up, maybe even flee the country. We need solid proof first. What kind of proof? Linda asked. He was very aware that Harrison had not released her wrist. He seemed to realize he was still holding her and let go abruptly, stepping back. His communications. If he has been working with Nexus Tech, there will be emails, messages, something. But he is too smart to use company servers. He would use personal devices, encrypted channels. Linda thought for a moment, then smiled slowly. What if we gave him something irresistible? Something he could not resist passing along to Nexus Tech? Harrison's eyes lit up with understanding. A trap. We create false information, make it look valuable, and ensure David has access to it. When he takes the bait and passes it along, we have proof of active espionage. Exactly, Linda said, feeling the thrill of the plan taking shape. But it has to be convincing. Something big enough that Nexus Tech would act on it immediately. Harrison began pacing, his mind clearly racing. We could fabricate a breakthrough in the titanium project. Make it look like we have solved the processing speed problem that has been slowing development. That would be worth millions to Nexus Tech if they believed it. Linda was already drafting the fake documents. I can create internal memos, technical specifications, even fake testing results. We make it look like you are keeping this breakthrough quiet to surprise the board and investors. And we make sure David sees it, Harrison finished. Leave the files somewhere he would naturally access them. Make it look accidental, like someone forgot to restrict the security settings. They worked through the night, crafting an elaborate deception. Linda created documents that looked authentic enough to fool experts, complete with technical jargon and realistic data. Harrison added details that only someone with deep industry knowledge would recognize as valuable. By 4 a.m, the trap was set. Wait, Harrison said, leaning back in his chair and rubbing his eyes with exhaustion. Linda saved the final file and looked at him. In the harsh fluorescent light of the office, he looked human in a way she had never seen before. Tired, vulnerable, stripped of the armor he usually wore. Can I ask you something? Linda said quietly. Of course. Earlier, you said you were terrified of losing me. Did you mean that? Harrison was quiet for so long that Linda thought he might not answer. Then he stood and walked to where she sat, leaning against the desk beside her chair. When I started this company, he said slowly, I told myself that emotions were liabilities, that caring about people would make me weak, would compromise my judgment. I built walls around myself, kept everyone at a professional distance. It worked. The company grew. We became successful beyond my wildest dreams. He paused, looking down at his hands. But somewhere along the way, I realized that success meant nothing if I had no one to share it with. No one who cared about me as a person rather than as a source of wealth or power. And then you walked into my office 5 years ago and everything changed. Linda's heart was pounding so hard she was sure he could hear it. Harrison, ... You challenged me, he continued, as if he had not heard her. You called me out when I was being unreasonable. You worked as hard as I did, cared about this company as much as I did. And slowly, without meaning to, I started depending on you. Not just for work, but for everything. Your opinion, your perspective, your presence. You became the person I looked for first thing every morning, and the last person I thought about before sleep. He finally looked at her, and the intensity in his eyes took her breath away. So yes, I meant it. I am terrified of losing you because somewhere along the way, you stopped being just my assistant and became the most important person in my life. And I have been too much of a coward to tell you until now. Linda stood, bringing them face to face, close enough to touch. You are the most frustrating, demanding, impossible man I have ever worked for, she said, her voice shaking slightly. You push me harder than anyone ever has. You expect more from me than I sometimes think I can give. You have made me want to quit at least 100 times. Harrison's expression fell, and Linda saw the hurt flash across his face before he could hide it. But you have also made me better, Linda continued quickly. Stronger, smarter, more capable than I ever thought I could be. You saw potential in me that no one else did, including myself. You gave me opportunities when everyone else saw just a receptionist. And somewhere along the way, I stopped working for you because I needed the job and started working for you because I could not imagine working for anyone else. She reached up and touched his face, feeling the rough stubble on his jaw. I care about you, Harrison. Not Mr. Reed, the CEO, but you. The man who works until 3 in the morning because he cares so much about his employees that he personally reviews every major decision. The man who anonymously pays for his assistant's mother's medical bills because he knows she's too proud to ask for help. The man who pretends to be cold and ruthless, but is actually terrified of letting people see how much he feels. Linda Harrison breathed, and then he was kissing her, his hands cupping her face with surprising gentleness. The kiss was everything Linda had not let herself imagine. Desperate and tender, fierce and soft, filled with 5 years of denied longing and unspoken feelings. When they finally pulled apart, both breathing hard, Harrison rested his forehead against hers. We should probably talk about this, he murmured. We probably should, Linda agreed. After we catch David and save the company? After we catch David and save the company, Linda confirmed. Smiling against his lips, a notification chimed on Linda's computer. They pulled apart reluctantly, and Linda checked the screen. He took the bait, she said, her voice filled with satisfaction. David accessed the fake files 20 minutes ago. And look, he just sent an encrypted message to an external email address. We have him. Harrison's expression shifted back to business mode, though his hand found Linda's and squeezed gently. Contact Robert in security. Tell him to monitor David's every move, but not to approach him yet. We need to catch him in the act of passing the information to Nexus Tech. Already on it, Linda said. Typing quickly with her free hand while refusing to let go of Harrison's with the other, the trap had been set. The betrayer had been identified. And somehow, in the midst of corporate espionage and company crisis, Linda and Harrison had found something neither of them had been looking for. Each other. The next 36 hours were a carefully choreographed operation. Linda and Harrison worked with Robert Torres and his security team to monitor David Brennan's every move. They watched as he copied the false information onto a personal drive, waited as he arranged a meeting with Nexus Tech representatives, and followed as he drove to a restaurant in downtown Manhattan where corporate secrets were traded over expensive wine and calculated smiles. Linda sat in the surveillance van with Harrison and Robert. Watching the video feed from the restaurant, David was visible through the window, sitting across from 2 men in expensive suits. One of them, Linda recognized from trade publications, was Marcus Vaughn, Nexus Tech's chief technology officer. Audio is coming through clearly, Robert said, adjusting his headphones. They are discussing the titanium project specs right now. David just handed over the documents. That is conspiracy to commit corporate espionage, Harrison said coldly. We have him, Linda said suddenly, leaning forward to study the video feed more carefully. Look at the third person at the table. The woman in the corner. Harrison peered at the screen. Then his expression darkened. That is Patricia Lansing. She is on our board of directors. The revelation hit like a bomb. Patricia Lansing was not just a board member. She was one of Charles Whitmore's closest allies. If she was involved in the leak, the conspiracy went far deeper than a single disgruntled employee. Record everything, Harrison ordered Robert. I want video, audio, photographs. Make sure we have undeniable proof of her involvement. They watched as Patricia leaned forward, her voice low but captured perfectly by the directional microphone. The board is ready to move against Harrison. Once the stock price drops low enough from the leaked information, we will call for a vote of no confidence. Charles has the proxies lined up. Harrison will be removed as CEO, and Nexus Tech can make an acquisition offer that the board will be forced to accept. David nodded eagerly. In my position at Nexus Tech after the merger? Marcus Vaughn smiled. VP of Integrated Technologies, as promised. Triple your current salary, full benefits, and a generous stock option package. This is not just corporate espionage, Linda said, her voice shaking with anger. This is a hostile takeover. They are trying to destroy the company from the inside so Nexus Tech can buy it for pennies on the dollar. Harrison's jaw was tight, his hands clenched into fists. Linda recognized the signs of barely controlled rage. She placed her hand over his, squeezing gently to ground him. We have them, she said quietly. We have proof of everything. But we need to be smart about this. If we move too fast, they will lawyer up and tie this in court for years. We need to checkmate them publicly, completely, so there is no escape. Harrison looked at her, and Linda saw the moment his rage transformed into cold calculation. The board meeting. Tomorrow morning, Charles called an emergency session to discuss the crisis. He is planning to use it as a platform to remove me. Then we let him think he has one, Linda said, her mind racing. We walk into that meeting as if we have no idea about the conspiracy. We let Patricia and Charles make their move. And then we reveal everything in front of the entire board with evidence they cannot deny. Robert grinned. I like the way you think, Linda. Nothing like catching conspirators in the act. They spent the rest of the night preparing. Robert compiled the surveillance footage into a devastating presentation. Linda prepared documents outlining the entire conspiracy, complete with financial records, access logs, and communication transcripts. Harrison contacted the company's lawyers, the SEC, and local law enforcement, ensuring everyone would be ready to move when the evidence went public. By the time the board meeting convened the next morning, Linda felt exhausted but exhilarated. She stood beside Harrison as they entered the conference room where 12 board members waited. Patricia Lansing sat near Charles Whitmore, her expression carefully neutral. David Brennan was conspicuously absent, held for questioning by security under the pretense of routine investigation. Harrison Charles began, his voice grave. Thank you for joining us. As you know, the situation with the titanium project leak has caused significant damage to the company. Stock prices continue to fall, investors are demanding answers, and the board has lost confidence in the current leadership structure. Are you proposing a vote of no confidence? Harrison asked calmly, as if the outcome did not matter. I am proposing that we restructure the executive team, Charles said smoothly. Bring in experienced crisis managers. Perhaps consider merger opportunities that could stabilize the company during this difficult time. Merger opportunities with whom? Linda asked, speaking up for the first time. Do you have a specific company in mind, Charles? Charles frowned at her interruption. That is executive-level discussion, Linda, not appropriate for staff. Linda is not just staff, Harrison said quietly. She is the person who identified the conspiracy to destroy this company. The conspiracy that involves 2 people in this room. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 20 degrees. Board members exchanged confused glances. Patricia Lansing went very still, her face carefully blank. What are you talking about? Charles demanded. Harrison nodded to Linda, who activated the presentation screen. The video from the restaurant began playing. Crystal clear audio and video of David Brennan, Marcus Vaughn, and Patricia Lansing discussing their plan to sabotage Quantum Industries. We have been investigating the leak for the past 48 hours. Harrison explained as the board members watched in stunned silence. What we discovered was not simple corporate espionage, but a coordinated effort to tank our stock price so that Nexus Tech could acquire us at a fraction of our true value. The video continued, showing Patricia's statement about the board being ready to move against Harrison. About Charles having proxies lined up, Charles had gone pale, his carefully constructed composure crumbling. I had no knowledge of any conspiracy. Patricia acted alone, without board authorization. Did I? Patricia said coldly, standing abruptly. Are you really going to throw me under the bus, Charles? After everything we planned together? Shut up, Charles hissed. But it was too late. We have financial records showing payments from Nexus Tech to offshore accounts controlled by both David Brennan and Patricia Lansing. Linda continued, advancing the presentation to show bank statements and wire transfers. We have recorded conversations, email transcripts, and testimony from 3 other quantum employees that Patricia attempted to recruit into the scheme. This is insane, Patricia said, but her voice lacked conviction. You cannot prove any of this was sanctioned at a board level. We do not need to, Harrison replied. Corporate espionage, conspiracy to commit fraud, breach of fiduciary duty. These are criminal charges, Patricia. The second FBI are waiting outside right now. As for the board, any member who voted to remove me based on artificially created crisis, the door opened and 2 FBI agents entered, followed by SEC investigators. Patricia Lansing was read her rights and escorted from the room, her face. Charles Whitmore resigned on the spot, trying desperately to distance himself from the conspiracy, though everyone knew his involvement went deeper than he would admit. When the authorities left with Patricia in custody, the remaining board members sat in stunned silence. I think Margaret Chen said finally, "That we owe you and Linda an apology, Harrison, and our thanks. You've saved this company." Linda saved this company, Harrison corrected, looking at her with open admiration. She identified the conspiracy, designed the trap that caught them, and coordinated the entire investigation. Without her, Nexus Tech would own Quantum Industries by next quarter. Then perhaps, said Robert Torres, the security head, we should be discussing Linda's position in this company going forward, because executive assistant seems inadequate for someone who just prevented a corporate takeover. Harrison smiled, the first genuine smile Linda had seen since the crisis began. I agree completely. Linda, how would you feel about the position of Vice President of Strategic Operations? Full equity stake, seat on the board, complete authority over crisis management and corporate security protocols. How Linda felt her breath catch. VP position, board seat, equity stake. It was everything she had worked toward for 5 years. Everything she had never quite let herself believe was possible. I accept, she said, her voice steady, despite the emotion threatening to overwhelm her. On one condition, name it, Harrison said immediately. You start treating yourself and your employees like human beings instead of machines. Reasonable work hours, actual vacations, acknowledgement when people do good work. This company almost fell apart because people were too afraid or too exhausted to notice a traitor in their midst. That changes now. Harrison held her gaze for a long moment, then nodded. Agreed? Anything else? Yes, Linda said, very aware that the entire board was watching them. About what happened between us last night. The board members shifted uncomfortably, clearly sensing they were about to witness something personal. Harrison did not look away from Linda. That changes things between us professionally, Linda continued. I cannot be your VP of Strategic Operations and your girlfriend without creating conflicts of interest and potential HR nightmares. Harrison's expression fell, disappointment clear on his face. I understand. The VP position is yours regardless. I would never ask you to choose between career advancement and personal feelings. Good, Linda said, smiling now. Because I am not choosing. I am having both. I will be your VP of Strategic Operations, and you will be my boyfriend. We will navigate the complications together, with full transparency to HR and the board, clear boundaries between professional and personal, and zero tolerance for any suggestion that my promotion is based on anything other than merit. Harrison stared at her for a moment, then laughed, a sound of pure relief and joy. You are incredible. Do you know that? I am starting to believe it, Linda replied. Margaret Chen cleared her throat. For the record, the board fully supports Linda's promotion based on her exemplary performance during this crisis. We also support whatever personal relationship she and Harrison choose to pursue, provided it does not compromise their professional judgment or the company's interests. It will not, Harrison and Linda said simultaneously, then looked at each other and smiled. The meeting adjourned shortly after, board members filing out with a mixture of relief and lingering shock. When the room was finally empty, Harrison pulled Linda into his arms, holding her close. Thank you, he murmured into her hair. For everything. For saving the company, for saving me, for not giving up when I was too much of a fool to see what I had. You were still too demanding, Linda said, but she was smiling as she held him. Still too intense? Still too focused on perfection? But you love me anyway? Harrison asked, pulling back to look at her face. Linda pretended to consider. I suppose I do. Against all common sense and better judgment, I absolutely do. Then I am the luckiest man alive, Harrison said, and kissed her with a tenderness that promised this was just the beginning. 6 months later, Quantum Industries launched the Titanium project to unprecedented success. Stock prices soared to record highs. Linda Carter, VP of Strategic Operations, graced the cover of Forbes magazine with the headline, "The Executive Who Saved an Empire." Harrison Reed remained CEO, but with a softer edge, implementing the changes Linda had demanded, including reasonable work hours and mandatory vacation policies. And on a quiet Sunday evening, in Harrison's penthouse overlooking the city they had fought so hard to protect, he asked Linda to marry him with a ring that sparkled as brightly as the future they would build together. She said yes, of course, because some things, the truly important things, were worth fighting for, and what they had built together, both professionally and personally, was irreplaceable, just like she had always been. Thank you for taking the time to listen to this story. If you enjoyed this content, don't forget to click like, share this story with your friends and family, and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on more meaningful stories.